We're talking to Johnny P. Angel, who is, again, a homegrown here at the ACA. You've been here for, how long have you been here, Johnny? It's been a couple of years. It's been a while.
Yeah, a few years.
Yeah.
I think I showed up sometime in originally 2015 or 16, something like that. And then
so you showed up before I did, and you like me at first. I think we're kind of in and out with the ACA. Now you're doing a lot of shows. You're pretty much on almost every week, whether it's on Talk Heathen or the nonprofits. You're really doing stuff. So really glad you get to be here on Truth Wanted. I thought we could start by talking about a little bit about you. You say that everybody knows your story. I don't think that's true. I think Truth Wanted listeners would be interested in knowing, how'd you get involved in all this? Like, and why do you care? What's your deconversion story, Johnny? The people want to know.
People want to know. Well, I'll tell you why I'm here. And it's because the world is always at gunpoint, sometimes literally, from with religious extremists on the other side. And I see that there are people who will not stop until all of us are forced to abide by their superstitions, particular rules. But I didn't always think this way. I started off as a kid from the frozen north who went to Catholic school and never really cared much about it. I said the other day that I learned to read by reading the Bible, which is true. I remember being
really
going.
Oh yeah, I actually why am I saying really? I heard that. Yeah, I remember you saying
it's really true,
which is really wild. I think I learned how to read, I think, by playing Pokemon games on the Game Boy. I think that was like really a bedrock for my comprehension skills.
Okay.
Which is weird because a lot of half the words in that game aren't real words because they're like Pokemon names. So.
Well, you say that, and I remember liking the begats sections of the Bible when I was a kid, because you had to pronounce a bunch of silly old names. And so I get to practice my pronunciation skills. But yeah, I grew up a Catholic kid going to what appears to be a fairly liberal or politically indifferent school. And we never talked about hellfire. We never talked about homosexual folk, or trans folk weren't on the radar in those days, at least not in my school. And there was no anti-evolution or anti-science attitudes. It was more, here's what you need to learn about the world and also, Jesus. And then I went to a Catholic high school, and then I just started kind of doubting the veracity of the Gospels and what have you. Actually, before that, middle school is probably where I went through like a brief period where I was like super intense, and then started asking those questions that didn't make any sense. I did a show with Matt once.
You think the Catholic school?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you think the Catholic school would like imbue your faith? You think it would make it stronger in your faith? I mean, you went to a whole school about it.
It probably extended my faith longer because when I went to high school, it was like a really cool high school where you could be Catholic and not prejudiced. It was an artsy fartsy place, and I loved going to school. And I think I probably postponed up the path that I was on for maybe a couple of years. But by the time I got to college, it was game over. I was a theology major originally, and took some theology classes, and then took some philosophy classes, and then had friends that didn't believe, and then it was off to the races. Yeah.
You were hanging out with the sinners, Johnny. See, that was your problem. You didn't stay with the flock.
Dude,
I figured you out.
One of my first roommates, these twins, I actually lived with one twin, and I was friends with his brother, and they went to Bob Jones University, and they were raised to be extreme Christians, and they were the ones that were throwing at me all of the nonsense they learned growing up. Like, that's insane. What are you talking about? No. There was a water vapor shield that protected the earth from UV rays, and that was when the firmament fell apart. and they told me little bits here and there about
Oh man,
how cuckoo it was. And so that
I
might have
feel
been,
like if you go to Bob Jones, yeah, if you go to Bob Jones, there's only two options for you. You either become a mega atheist or you become one of those hardcore Christians that starts a church that gets like reported on Twitter every other week for saying something homophobic. Like those are your two options.
Yeah, it does seem like that. I know that if you want to hook up at Bob Jones University, you go to the J.C. Penney changing rooms. I know that. I knew that from the stories they used to tell me.
I'm not gonna ask any details on that. What I will ask is just following up on that. So like, you know, you grew up in this Christian world, you started to have these doubts, but there's a lot of people, Johnny, who like leave the faith, right? Who kind of figure out, this is all BS. This isn't for me, whatever, and they don't really do anything on it, or they just move on with their lives. But here we are talking about this stuff like pretty much every week. Right. And I feel like there's a difference between the casual non-believer and the people like us who, I don't know if we're just obsessed or if we just, you know, it's the only thing we know how to talk about. But really, I mean, obviously I have my reasons, but like, what are the reasons for you? Like, why do you choose to do this stuff?
I think that I mentioned this before. I did an interview with Matt once of my deconversion story. I did one with Neil, the 604 atheist, as well. And I had said that it always seemed kind of fishy, like bad reasoning. And I was always a very argumentative child, in like, I think like in a nice way, because I think people like me, parents like me and stuff. But I was always asking obnoxious questions. And then, of course, I became an attorney eventually, maybe, and allegedly. And it sort of carried on. And as I've gotten a little older, I've channeled my argumentative nature and I've fine-tuned it so it's not quite so harsh and obnoxious sometimes. So what is that? But it's mostly about giving a crap about the people around me. I mean, I'm not perfect. I do selfish things all the time. But when I see other people doing selfish things to harm people because of fairy tales, then that just crawls up my spine, and I got to say something. And so it's because of that. Yeah. If it weren't for like kids being told that they're garbage people because they have certain identities or because they don't believe in freaking Santa Claus or whatever the hell religion believes these days, then I think I wouldn't have any stake in this game. You know,
that's interesting. I don't think I was ever the argumentative type, but for me, it was like when I did a deep dive on the Bible and its history, and really the history of the Christian church, but specifically the Bible and its texts and the beliefs that have come just from this one book, I realized I have this information. I felt like I was the guy in the basement putting the string on the thumbtacks, right? Like putting all the pieces together and thinking, well, maybe I must be wrong here because so many people think this is true. But really, it's the people who are the most objective, right? The ones who are doing the scholarly work on this, who have went to years of university, the ones that we're supposed to be able to trust in these institutions are the ones who are coming to put the pieces together on a lot of the history of this stuff, and are the first to tell you that that the stories that we heard growing up are maybe more than they appear, right? There may be something else going on there. And it's like, I want to be able to share that with people as much as possible because it really changed my life, obviously, right? Not just in the fact that I go on these shows, but also like how I think about things, how I relate to people. As you mentioned, how you treat people really is really going to be dependent on how you feel about this whole religion thing. So I'm glad that you're in the space that you're in, Johnny. I'm glad that you're a host here with us and that you can give your perspective. You mentioned before the show that you don't think your story is as interesting, but honestly, I think everybody's story is interesting and how we all come to the places that we get to. But real quick, just want to remind folks that we do have a couple open lines. We got some people who are ready to talk to us, but if you want to get your call in, now is a good time to do it. The number for that is going to be 512-991-9242. Or if you want to call in online, you can visit tiny.cc/call-TW. You can talk to me and Johnny P. Angel. Again, local. We're going local today, ladies and gentlemen. It's a fun time. So Johnny, what's going on now with the nonprofits and Talk Heathen and stuff? You guys, I mean, you've been producing nonprofits for a while. How's that experience been?
I'm co-producing with 3 other fabulous co-producers. Cynthia McDonald is our newest. Jason Sherwood is our second newest, and Malty is one of the original 3 who joined. And so we are, the news is rife with examples of religious overreach, anti-science claims, conspiracy theories, fascism disguised as patriotism and nationalism, and a whole lot of bad thinking out there. And so there's, unfortunately for the world, there's plenty of material to pick from. There's bigotry around every corner, but we have some laughs about it. It's kind of hard not to see the absurdity in it all. For those of us who aren't on the front lines of prejudice and our rights being restricted. But I still have hope that by educating each other and really digging into the facts and learning how to read news, learning how to discern between the so-called fake news and the real news out there, that you can become an informed citizen.
It's super important. Yeah, super important. Yeah, I mean, like, for those of you who haven't seen it, we sometimes talk about current events on this program, but I don't always get into it a whole lot, and part of that is because we already have a current events show. It is the Nonprofits, which is recorded weekly. So you guys should definitely check that out too. Whenever we talk about, hey, all the other shows you should check out, the Nonprofits is our current events show. So if you want to hear the perspective on what's going on, that's the place to do it. And Johnny is on board with that. Well, again, thanks again for joining me today.